Hello family, how you doing once again? It's a privilege to come across to you once again. This is David A. King, and here at CRUMBLE, as always, we break the mold and we build the bold. It is a privilege again, once again, to have a conversation with one of my favorite associates as she comes and share some of the information on the child and its future. It is always great to have different perspective from different people so that we can have better information, tips and techniques on how to raise the next generation. As we know, the youth and the young adult are the future of tomorrow. And so it will be very important for us to be able to have enough information that can help us to navigate those roles, right? And so, full disclosure, CRUMBLE, it's not a podcast. We are a non-for-profit organization that deals with ABC, which is African, Caribbeans, Black, and we do so by supporting them in various ways, in leadership, personal development, supporting those in shelters. We do quite a number of things. And so please, if you do want to be a part of CRUMBLE in supporting, being a partner, please do well and connect directly with me. You can go to any of my social medias handles, david.king, or you can go to CRUMBLE_build. Thank you so much. And so without any further ado, please do welcome our guest for the day. All right, here we are, our guest for the day. Please make her welcome as she introduces herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Samira Osei-Reko. I am a first-year student doing my master's in social work. I have a background in child and youth care, and I'm excited to be here today. I am the youngest of 6 children.
Okay.
My background is a Ghanaian background, and I'm just excited to share my input today.
Great. Thank you so much. We're happy to have you. So right on, my first question will be, what do you think is the biggest challenge that parents are facing today?
I think the biggest challenge parents are facing is building a relationship with their children. I think that's the biggest thing, is communication. I think there's the gap in wherever the parent was from. Like, for example, my parents are Ghanaian, so their traditions, and then I was born here. So then there could be a clash sometimes.
Right.
So trying to understand that their mindset is in a different time, and then my mindset is also in a different time. So where can we find the middle ground where we both understand each other, but still acknowledging that that's still your parent and you're still the child, right? So I think the biggest thing is just the relationship aspect of trying to build with your child and understand them and actually getting to know who they are and the things that they like to do and like to produce out into this world. I think a lot of the times it's kind of just, you know, you're my child, you should already know what it is, no long talking, but it's like that long talking is what we need. And I think you sure you know what to do, and that's it. So I think that's the biggest challenge, is building that relationship and kind of like, and for other parents too, like from what I've seen is like a foundation. I think a lot of kids don't know boundaries as well. So you can't blur the lines between a parent and a child. You guys are not friends. Some people beg to differ, but you guys are not friends. So I think those are the challenges, because the minute you cross that boundary, then it's like, who's respecting you? Now you're talking to your child anyhow, the child's talking to you anyhow. You guys are in the public and you're looking at this family and it's like, wait, how old is this child? 5 years old, talking to you crazy, you know? So I think that's the biggest challenge, is like being a parent and people learning how to actually be a parent. It's like, what is a parent? It's like just getting to know your child. I think that's the biggest thing, and knowing who you stand as a parent. And I know everyone has their own traumas or experiences, so it's hard to kind of navigate that. But I think setting the foundation very early is very important.
Right. So I hear you, you touched on communication and knowing how to bridge the gap between the older generation and the newer one, right? And so finding a way to incorporate and meeting halfway, more like a middle ground. Yeah. So with that perspective, given that most people are, let's talk in a perspective of Canada, right? Because we have different rules and laws and regulations. If a parent was trying to bridge that gap and it looks like they were abusing their child, while given from where they're coming from, that is not abuse. It's more of a parenting style, or trying to guide their child to be able to become that better version that they aspire them to be. Do you think it's important then in that case to kind of take your children back home, just to kind of have that same perspective of where your parent came from, so that way they can have both perspective from where their parents are coming from and how they are in their foreign country, to be able to understand what their parents are actually trying to do? How important do you think it is to take your child back home?
Yeah, I think it's very important, because the Western world is obviously very much different than back home.
Right.
There needs to be some type of understanding, and you're not going to understand unless you see. Especially for me, like, I'm a visual learner, so I need to see things firsthand. So I haven't been to Ghana in the last 19 years, and I went back in 2024 July. And for me, that trip was very intentional in the sense of I need to understand my parents more, because the last time I went there was when I was 5 years old, and I remember bits and pieces, but it wasn't the same as now as an adult going there. So just seeing how they are in their environment and how they operate, it's like, okay, like, I understand why you are like this way, or I'm understanding why you're like this. But obviously as a child growing up, you don't see it that way. Right. So I think it's like, I wish that I went earlier. Like, I went when I was 5, but I wish I consistently went, so that there was more of an understanding, where it's like there was a big gap in between. So I think, you know, especially when you talk about the discipline thing, obviously, you know, in Canada, you know, there's CAS, okay? Like, CAS don't play in that sense, but, you know, like, you can't be beating your kid, you know? You can't be beating your kid, but at the end of the day, like, there has to be that understanding, like, why are you doing this to me? And I think that's the thing, like, if you got beat as a child, there's no debrief as to why I beat you. It's just come and eat. Right. When you're no sorry, no nothing, right? Because then, you know, we're deemed as soft or whatever it may seem. But I think that a debrief is important. If you're gonna beat your child, this is why I beat you. You should know. And it's like, but then there's also that, like, you already know why I beat you, so I shouldn't be talking. They don't like the long talking. Right. No long talking, right? So if you're going back home, you're observing, you're seeing families around you, because it's more community. Like, as soon as you're walking on the road, like, you see different families, you see how they're operating. You're more keen to be observant. So I think it's very important that you go back home and you're able to see. And me personally, if I have got kids in the future, God willing. God willing.
We hope so. We pray so.
God willing, like, I definitely want to take them consistently as much as I can. And, you know, just so that they're in tune. Like, there's people that are not even eating their cultural foods because... Like, no, you can't be doing that.
Right. So it's very important to have your kids go back home, just to be able to associate and see it for themselves. So they're able to understand even how their parents are trying to communicate with them. It will make more sense because they have had that opportunity to actually see. Now, we are still dealing, like, I'm trying to blend in between the immigrants and the non-immigrant, because of course the youth is like a broad picture. How do you think, like, what's your take on sleepovers? I know I don't think I ever heard the word sleepover growing up back home. I came to Canada when I was already an adult, so I never heard the word sleepover. I don't know what sleepover is. I slept in my father's house from when I was born until when I left. I don't know what sleepovers are. But coming in the country, it's a foreign country, you know, you have kids, you have nieces, you have nephews, and they hear these things, sleepovers, and it's a foreign language to me. Now, being that you have your child in the country and you don't want to look like some kind of ways, what's your take on sleepovers?
Absolutely no sleepovers. Absolutely no sleepovers. And speaking on myself, when I was younger, I could not go to any sleepover. They don't even want to hear this in sleep. They don't want to hear. Don't ask me. Don't even try it. Don't look at me sideways. Forget about it. Like, just forget about it. Right. Obviously, at the time, I was angry. I'm not understanding, you know, because it's like, you know, you go to school and your people are talking about these things, and it's like, you have to try to explain, like, oh, your parents are just saying no. And then they're like, why? You can't even answer the why. They just said no. Like, you're not allowed to. There's no explanation in that sense. But obviously at the time, as a child, I wasn't understanding. But growing up, I'm so thankful. I am so thankful that I did not do any sleepovers. Right. I'm so thankful. Aside from family, like literal family, but at the same time, like with other people, like it was a no. If you're going somewhere, you're coming back and you're sleeping in your own bed. You have a bed here. What's the point of sleeping over at someone else's house? How much time do you need to spend together that you need to sleep there? That was the, you know, the ideology behind that. But I think you hear a lot of cases of things that happen during sleepovers, and, you know, as much as even if there's trust between that family and your family, like you just never know, and it gets very messy in that sense. So just to avoid, you know, that and all that, just, it's okay. Like, no sleepovers. I don't think that's really necessary. Sure, you can have friends, you can, you know, go to their birthday parties or whatever, but you're coming home. Too much goes on.
Right. And I hear you say that you were, as a child, it felt like it was not fair for your parent to say
whole punishment.
A whole punishment, like no sleepovers, and there is no explanation. But as an adult now, you kind of like understand and feel the importance of why your parent did that, and you are grateful.
Yeah.
And I think I want to go back to your first answer on communication. Yes, of course, you are a child, but at the same time, I think it's important that our parent or whoever our guardian are, they're able to explain why you are not allowed to go to sleepovers, right? Because it will make more sense to them not to feel like they're just being punished, or maybe your parent just don't like that family, but trying to find a way to kind of explain to a child to understand this is why we don't do sleepovers, even if you won't give them the actual reality that this could happen, like a little picture. So when they are asked why not doing sleepovers, they are able to explain and at least articulate to the best of their understanding as to how their parent explained to them. This is why I can't do sleepovers. Like my parent, I don't know, something for them to be able, so they don't look weird or out of place.
And that's the thing, like, you know, even as a child, like your self-esteem, right? Because it's like, okay, like I'm like, everyone's talking about it after the fact. They come back from the weekend, we had a sleepover there. You're just sitting there, standing there looking like, you know, and it's like you're not even able to like obviously interact in that conversation because you weren't there and you weren't able to do that. So I think that's the thing. Like, as much as especially African parents, they don't like to over-explain themselves because they feel like they don't have to, but it's so important just for understanding. We're children, like children are very curious, so you have to break things down. That's just how it is, especially, I guess, westernized children. Because, you know, I was born here, so, you know.
So you're westernized?
I'm not that westernized, guys. I'm
a little bit.
Just a tad bit. Okay, but...
Like 20%?
Yes.
50? No?
We're dragging it now. Okay, 6 kids, 4 of them were born in Ghana, and then the last 2 were born here. So I'm seeing the waves of, like, differences in a lot of things, and I'm also seeing how they were before and how, you know, being in Canada long enough has changed things too, right? So, yeah.
All right. I want to ask a question on faith and religion, right? And I know like faith and religion is something that is big. Like when you talk about back home, should it be made mandatory
in the household?
In a household.
Yes, absolutely.
Did you hesitate the yes, or the yes is coming with power?
I was thinking about my own self because, you know, I always have to think about myself before I, you know, articulate that. But I think it is very important, and I think it's very important how it's done, because as a child, it's like, okay, wake up, it's Sunday, get up, you're mad, you're angry, you're sleepy, get up, get dressed, we're going to church. But there's not really that, like, okay, there's a conversation, you know, who God is, who Jesus is, you know, read the Bible, you know, go to Sunday school and all those things. But there just needs to be that level of like, you know, this is the reason why you need to do these things. And you're young now, but as you grow up, you'll start to understand. And I think for me personally, it's like, yeah, I'm told the basics, like, you know, pray before you eat, pray before you go to sleep. But there's things that you can interweave into a child very early on that they'll begin to see later on, right? And at the same time, everyone has their own time frame. Right. But I think, like for my family, it's like we went to church and then that was it. So like, I'm wondering how it would have looked if we did Bible study together. At home. If we read like, you know, biblical books together, you know, if... You know that African parents don't be doing bedtime stories, but you know, like what if you read me a little bedtime story, you know, about the journey of Jesus or the story of Moses and the burning bush, right? So I'm wondering like if it was more pushed in those ways and not just, okay, Sunday, you're going to church and that's just it, you know, more connected with the church and community. I'm wondering how different that would have looked for me personally and for others that are, you know, raising their child. Right.
And that's not just for a Christian-based family, it could be for any other religion, just for them to be able to like involve those aspects and not just the church or the mosque or the whatever they go to, whichever religion is, but like to be able to bring that same aspect back into the household, it kind of give a different perspective because you are home, you are relaxed, you are in your home, you're comfortable, you're having that interaction with your parents, you kind of like understand to a different perspective, or maybe even in depth, because at church or the mosque it's like 20 minutes or an hour at best, but like at home you have all this luxury of time that you can actually engage and dialogue and have those questions with your parents, right? So I hear what you're saying.
I think it's very important because church is one thing. It's very important to go to church, but it doesn't end there. And I think that's just the thing. It ends a lot at church for people. And it's like, there's still the rest of the week. And so much happens in a week. Like so much happens in a week. By Wednesday, your head is already spinning. So it's like, you know, it's very important to keep it going. This could be like one of those tricky, controversial questions, especially for an African person, right? Because it's something that we're not raised into, but we are discovering these things as we migrate to other countries. I don't want to put an age, but just from a perspective, do you think a child should be paying or contributing to like the household expenses or even paying rent? Is that like, what's your take on that? It is a little controversial for sure, because one could say, I didn't ask to be born, so why are you asking me? Why are you asking me to pay, right? Like, I just got here. The minute someone gets a job, hey, give me some of that. All these years, you've been living here for free. Open your pockets. But at the same time, for me personally, I do think it is an important thing. I think it also depends on your personality. I'm naturally a giver, so I don't mind doing it. Whereas other people is like, no, I want to save my money, or like, no, I don't feel, you're feeling entitled to, you know, because I'm the child, you're the parent, so you're supposed to be taking care of me. But it's like, you're going to reach a point where it's like, for example, like I said, my parents had 6 kids. So my parents are old. They're old. They are old. They're older, right? So I'm in a place where it's like, okay, I'm the last one at home. What do you mean you're not helping? Like, you know, so it's like everyone's already moved out, and it's like, so in ways that I could contribute, I'll contribute. So I do think it's important, but it does depend on the person and just what their values are. But people can argue that it's not. But personally, I think it's important because I don't think there's any harm in it. But I do think there's harm in being taken advantage of. So I'm not going to forget that part, because everyone's story looks different when it comes to contributing, because then it gets a little bit abusive. Like, now you really have to owe me, you know, like the parents looking at the child like, well, I did so many things for you. But it should never be in that type of situation, you know, where like you feel entitled to because you've taken care of this child, but this child in reality didn't ask to be here. So, you know, and if you see that your parents are struggling or whatever it is, like naturally you'd want to support in ways that you can. Like, I can't do it all, but in ways that I can, I'll help.
How would you have that conversation with your child if you realize that they don't have that mindset to start helping? Even though, let's say, for example, they have a job or something and they're still living in the household, but they are not contributing or supporting. How would you go about having that conversation?
I think it's about explaining, like, let's say, like, you know, let's say you're renting a place and they're raising it and it's getting very expensive. I think it's just having that conversation with the child that, you know what, you see me working hard, I am working hard, you know, we all like to have a place to live, but at the end of the day, like, you know, I need support in this area. Like, are you able to help me in this area? And I think the important part is like kind of weaving it into them as they're growing up, like building that independence, but also letting them know that, like, you know, I'm here to support you, because as a kid, you're going to say, oh, mom or dad, you know, I need help in this. Can you help me there? So it's not about even saying, oh, I helped you and I did that, but it's about, okay, wait, like, you know, my mom is a giver. So you have to teach your kids to be a giver, but obviously not being taken advantage of. Like, you can receive, but be a giver, be generous, you know, in the sense, in limitations, of course, but at the same time, like, for me personally, the way I want to raise my child, they won't even ask why, because of how I've treated them along the way. You know? Yeah. But if they say no, I'm joking. I'm joking, but I don't think they would say no. But I think, just like I said, communication is so important. I think the level of how I would explain it, there's no reason to fight in that way. And obviously if the ask is just a little bit here, or just grocery here or there, don't tell them to pay your home mortgage.
Right.
And they just got their first job, like
let them save. You
yeah.
had mentioned earlier that you do hope or you do wish to have children. And so that brings me to my next question. I didn't forget. Of course, I got it memorized. Of course. So as I can't forget that. As an aspiring parent, what's one thing you would want to accomplish in your parenting role?
Open communication. I'm saying it through and through. There's just open communication. I think that's the biggest thing, because there's so many times in life where I want to talk to my mom about something or my dad about something, but I'm like, I know the response I'm going to get, so let me just swallow it. And then your chest is just burning. Your chest is just burning, and it's like, who do you go to? It's like, yeah, you have friends that you can go to. You have people that are like family that you can go to. But I'm living in a space where two people are actively here. You're alive, you're well, you're here.
Right.
Why is it that I'm suffering behind closed doors and I know I can't speak to you about certain things, or your reaction is going to be big before it gets small? And it's like, can it start small? But I know, but I know that's just how Africans are at the end of the day, right? So it's like that understanding of knowing how they are, but it's like, if I already preconceived like what you're going to say, what's the point, right? So I think open communication is very big, like talking to your children along the way, like, you're growing up, what are you going through? How's your day? What'd you do today at school? Like, how was work today? What happened at work today? You need to be in constant communication. I don't have that kind of communication with my parents. Like, just be like, hi, how are you? Good, okay. We're not going into depths about things, but so much has happened in the day, right? So it's like being very open. You're sitting at the table together. Oh, how's your day? What's going on? What's new? Just getting to know them. And naturally, they'll just start telling you things. They'll start talking to you. But if that wall is kind of there, you're not going to ever feel comfortable to open up, because of how the responses are going to be taken, or even like the lack of care. I think that's the biggest thing too. For me personally, it's like, I'm already assuming you don't care because you don't ask. Right. So I'm not going to just
start talking.
Right. So I think for me, open communication is just what I would like to achieve in my parenting to the best of my abilities, because I don't want my child to be suffering in silence, because,
while you are still there.
While I'm still there, and it leads to other things, or now they're finding, or they're feeling some type of void in other things. Because then drugs, alcohol, you know what I mean? So yeah, mental health is a big thing, so we don't want it to escalate. Yeah.
I hear something in your response, and it's not part of my questionnaires, but I just want to touch. Given that we are already at that situation whereby there is no open communication, but we want to birth it at that junction, how do you go about it? As a child or as a parent? So I want you maybe to speak from a perspective of a child. How do you start birthing or bridging that? Or from a perspective of a parent, how do you, because now you have the awareness that this is happening and you have the desires to want to change it. How do you go about it? How could you go about it from your own perspective?
I think a lot of things start from when the child is young. So the little things. If you know your child is going, to school. Let's say your child is starting school. How was school? What did you do today at school? You're communicating. The child knows that the parent cares because you're asking. So naturally, as you continue to do these things, that's obviously just one example. As you continue to do these things, the child is just naturally able to just tell you things, because you always ask, or they might even find it weird that you forgot to ask them, because it's like, why didn't you ask me about my tournament that I had? Because you're so used to asking these things. So now, because you have that rapport, and based on how you guys communicate and I think we can't forget the piece of how you communicate back and forth. That's very important. If the child knows you're gonna be in flames if I say something, they're not gonna say certain things. And I think that's the biggest thing, because people can communicate, but they're very selective of what they want to say. And I think obviously, being a child and being a parent, you don't want to tell your parents everything. And, as a parent too, you don't need to tell your child everything as well. But there needs to be some type of foundation where there's communication and dialogue being able to be said. And then as a parent too, just being curious about your child. I think that's the biggest thing, especially when they're transitioning through different stages of development. Let's say they're now in their adolescence or going into high school. They're about to change completely. So being very keen on what's happening, having those conversations from when you were a teenager, having that open communication, for example, being pure. sex, these things. No one wants to say the word. Just don't get pregnant. And it's like, that's not enough for someone to, not get pregnant. It's like you
need the whole conversation.
You need the whole conversation. You need to break it down. That's just the thing. Like, and that's why I say communication is so important, because the brain is still developing and the brain is curious. And because you told me not to do it, now I'm curious because I don't know why.
Right.
A baby's gonna be born, but like, it's like, okay, but why? What's the depths in it? Tell me about soul ties. Tell me about this. Tell me about that. Just for an example. But it's like, you don't know these things until you grow up, and then you're like, oh, okay, I see now.
Right.
Yeah. So you gotta learn the hard way.
At times it could be too late.
Yeah,
going through,
and you wish someone had told you or sat you down earlier and actually had that conversation with you. Yeah.
That's good. I like that. I hope we are getting some nuggets from this lovely young lady over here. My last question will be, I know it could be a little sensitive to some people, but I think it's very important that we talk about these things. My role as here at CRUMBLE is to make sure that we dive into things that we shy away and becomes an issue down the road, and then we have to start working backwards, right? So the more we talk about things, we kind of like normalize them, that we are giving people that opportunity to say, oh, it's okay to talk about it, it's okay to try and find a solution. Whether it's at the beginning, middle, or late, as long as you have that awareness, you can start the process of healing, because you don't want to just let it go and go, because if you don't heal or you don't fix it, the possibilities of that trauma continuing in the next generation, it's still there. But if you start healing, we are trying to break that continuity of that trauma into the next generation. So my question would be, how important it is for you and this is very what is the word I'm looking for? It's very intentional that I'm asking this particular question. In a general perspective for everyone that will be watching this later on, how important it is for a female child to have a good relationship with their father, vice versa, or a father creating that, I want to say, healthy relationship with their daughter. How important it is for you first, and then in a general perspective.
For me first, okay. Yeah. Oh boy. Yes, this is a serious question. I think it's very important. I think, if anything, it's the most important.
Right.
A lot of people like to think, oh, moms are with the females and then dads are with the males. But I think there's a gap in understanding why dads are very important in a woman's life. I think, especially if, you're thinking in future, if you want to be with a male, if you're thinking about that long time, you need that role model to show you these things. But because I like to say women are more emotional. I can rebuttal that a little bit, but I'll just run with it for now. Women are more emotional, so they're more curious in a way of like that, gaining that emotionalness connection.
Right.
And I think your father is your first example of, people like to say like, oh, I want someone that's like my dad, because my dad, knows how to treat my mom, and he showed me, like, for example, like, your father is spending quality time with you. I think one-on-one time with your daughter is very important too, like, and doing the girly things, if that's what it is. If your daughter wants to go get her nails done, just take her, just go with her, because you're showing her what it is to be a gentleman. You're showing her what it is to be a man at the same time too, right? Because it's like, you're not saying, oh, that's up you and your mom saying, go, African parents, But anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. But for me personally, like, I would want my husband to say, oh, I'm taking out our daughter today. We're going to go, we're going to go to the mall today. We're going to go shopping. You're bonding, you're creating that communication. And when that child grows up, she knows not to settle for less, because her father has showed her the way. Her father is telling her how men are, because he is a man. Right. He's telling her what to accept, what to not accept. Because when there's that gap between being a female and, being a male, you're not able to like know, like, okay, maybe like, he's treating me wrong, for example, but you're not able to know that he's really treating you wrong because you think this is normal.
Right.
But it's not normal. But if you have that example, if you have that role model, off the bat my dad will never treat my mom like this, so why am I staying here? Goodbye.
Right.
But a lot of people don't have a relationship with their dad, and then there's like that hurts because like the daddy's girl thing is not existent for them, right? So like being able to sit down and have a conversation with your daughter, you know, getting to know your daughter and having the conversations that you need to have, because at the end of the day, your daughter's gonna grow up and she wants to obviously say with her chest, like, you know, my dad was amazing. I want someone that's like my dad, you know, and I'm not settling for anything less than that example that was set for me, right? You know, because otherwise you'll just be gallivanting and just trying to fill some type of void that you didn't have with your dad in a way, and then you're accepting the bare minimum and literally just anything, and we can't be having that.
Right.
We can't be having that.
We can't be having that.
We can't be having that.
That's good. That's good. I appreciate that your perspective.
Yeah, I hope that made sense.
It does, and I personally think it's very important because I was studying something on the stages of development, and there's a word that I was reading. It's called electra complex. It's just a stage whereby female, like when they're beginning to seek for male partners, they will seek for partners who have the same traits as their father. So imagine if they didn't have a father who had good traits. So they are going to be running towards bad boys, right? Because they didn't have any other better example to go after. So I think it's very important that they can, like parents or dads should at least work twice as harder to kind of forge that healthy relationship, because after all, you know, your daughter is gonna one day hopefully get married and produce offsprings. You don't want the trauma to continue. The idea is to try and understand the traumas that have been present and how to be aware of it and how to start breaking those traumas to create a better generation down the road. So my dear parents and my dear fathers, I hope that it was helpful and we can try our best to work around that relationship with our daughters so we can have healthy relationship and healthy daughters even as they go and start their own life. Right. Takeaway. What would you have our audience take away from today as a child or as a parent?
As a child, try your best. I know it's rough because I'm still a child. I know it's rough. At the end of the day, whatever age you're at, I think forgiveness is very important. Nobody's perfect. You have to also remember it's probably your parents' first time ever parenting. So be gracious in the way that things go. Obviously, there's hurts in different areas, but there's only so long, at least for me, there's only so long you can keep blaming your parents for how things are going. Like,
I like that.
There's only so long you have to just be like, you know what? I can't change their mindset. So how do you adapt to what you already have? And the only thing you can really do is control how you are and how you move going forward. Parents, please, 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 I beg. Please just take the time. I think that's the thing. Take the time. Like, it doesn't take much to just take the time to spend with your child. Quality time is so important. You find out a lot about your child in those moments because there's probably going to be a lot of things you're like, oh, I didn't know. There's a lot of people that probably see their child playing soccer and it's like the best on the team, but you never know because you never go to their games. Like, you know, people are telling you about your own child. That's not anything. You want to know, this is my child and I know that. You don't want anyone else to be telling you how amazing your child is or how they're this way or that way. Like, you know, take the time to actually sit down, communicate with them, let them make their mistakes, help them grow together. You know, no one's telling you don't be mad, don't be upset, but teach them with grace as well because the brain is still developing. And just be gracious on both ends. Just be gracious and forgiving and just know that we're all humans trying to figure out this life. So, Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for gracing us with your presence and your wisdom. Stop.
We look forward to having you next time, maybe for a different topic or maybe a panel discussion. So thank you everyone for watching. If you do have any questions, suggestions, and contribution, critiques, please do well and share them. We are always looking forward to learning, improving, and becoming the better versions of ourselves. Remember, this is Crumble. Break to build. Broken is not branded. See you next time.